All right, 4-1 work together. It says Isabel Seville owns a service business called Seville Company, which uses these accounts. In order to create a chart of accounts, you must first classify each account. For each account, select the type of account, assets, liabilities, owner's equity, revenue, or expenses in the appropriate classification column. So we're not actually creating our chart of account right now. We're just deciding where those accounts would appear on our chart of accounts. So notice they have it separated as our balance sheet accounts and our income statement accounts, and then it has itself separated as assets, liability, owner's equity, or revenue or expenses. We're simply going to go through each account and we're going to mark what type of account it is. Okay, so accounts payable, that is a liability. Accounts receivable, that is an asset. Accounts payable, we already looked at, would be a liability, and accounts receivable, we already looked at, would be an asset. Miscellaneous expense, huge hint in there, it has the word expense, that is listed as an expense. Same with insurance expense, and same with prepaid not prepaid insurance. Prepaid insurance, remember, is an asset. Okay, next we see our drawing account. Drawing account is a type of owner's equity. Cash would be something we own of value, that is an asset. Sales is revenue. Remember, right now, that's the only revenue we're dealing with is sales. Supplies, again, is something we own of value, so it's an asset. Here we see an expense account, supplies expense. Another expense account, automobile expense. Capital is an owner's equity. And rent expense is an expense account. Okay, I'm going to go to my next step. Okay, step 2, it says now that each account has been classified, we're going to assign account numbers to each account. You must assign account numbers so that accounts receivable, accounts payable, and expense accounts are in alphabetical order. Notice it does give us a hint here too. It says by last name in the case of accounts receivable. Use 3-digit account numbers and number the accounts with the division of tens. Okay, so from the lecture, we know that assets are 100 accounts, liabilities are 200 accounts, owner's equity is 300 accounts, revenue is 400 accounts, and expenses are 500 accounts. So assets, like we said in the lecture too, assets are going to be listed as the highest liquidity first. Liquidity, remember, means how easily it is turned into cash. So we see cash. Cash has the highest liquidity. We are going to put that one as 110. The first one stands for assets. It's a 100 account in assets. 10, then the next 2 digits show where it falls within those assets. Okay, after we see assets, we're going to have our accounts receivable after we have cash. We don't see a petty cash, so then we go to accounts receivable. Remember, we do accounts receivable alphabetical order. These are people's names. So since we have a people's names, we're going to go by their last name. So we have North and Verez. North is going to come first. So it's going to start with the 1. And then we're going to go by 10. So our next number is going to be 120. After 120, we're going to have 130. Okay, our next account that we're going to have is supplies, which will be 140. And then we have prepaid insurance, which will be 150. Okay, assets are done. We're going to go to liabilities. Liabilities are 200 accounts, so each account is going to start with a 2. Again, we are going to label these, we are going to sort these alphabetical. Now these are business names, so we can start with the first letter. So here we see A for Anoka Supplies. That's going to be our 210 account. The accounts payable supply mart then will be 220. Next section is our owner's equity, our 300 accounts. So these accounts are going to start with a 3. For owner's equity, we are always going to start with our capital account. So that's going to be our 310. And then we'll go to our drawing, which will be 320. Okay, revenue, we only have one revenue account, our sales account. Revenue accounts are our 400, so that's simply going to be 410. And then we have our expense accounts. Expenses are our 500 accounts, so they're all going to start with a 5. And these ones we're going to do alphabetical. So we see our first one, automobile expense. That one will be 510. Then we're going to go to insurance expense. Remember, alphabetical. So insurance expense will be 520. Then we have miscellaneous expense, which will be 530. Then we're going to have rent expense, which will be 540. And last, our supplies expense, which will be 550. I can grade step 2. Next step. And my last step, it says Ms. Seville has been classifying postage costs as miscellaneous expense, but has found that the amount paid each month for postage has become a major expense, and so she's decided to use a separate account, postage expense. This is something that could happen. So what happens is she has this expense, she doesn't use it very often, so she's just putting it in miscellaneous. Well, now that she realizes that it's something that she's using over and over, she's going to have a separate account for it. So that's why she's opening up that postage expense account. Also, a new account, utilities expense, is to be added to the chart of accounts. So it says account number should be assigned to postage expense, account number should be assigned to utilities expense. So we need to give an account number to each of them. So we'll start with our postage expense. Remember, expenses are alphabetical order. So first we have to figure out where is it going to fall in the expenses list. Okay, so hopefully going through the alphabet, we figured out it's going to go between our miscellaneous and our rent. So what we're going to do is miscellaneous is 530, rent is 540. So we're going to give postage 535. Our next one is our utilities expense. Again, we're going to look up on our expenses, figure out where that's going to fall. Utilities expenses is going to go to the bottom. So for this one, we're going to go by 10 and we're going to give it the number 560. Okay, it says a blank general ledger account is shown here with locations identified by numbers. Use the numbers to answer the questions to open the cash account. So it simply is saying what value is entered into location 1 and what value is entered into location 2. So for this first one, we would list our account title. Our account title is going to be cash. For location 2, that's going to be our account number. So if we go up to our chart of accounts, we see that cash is 110. So here we would simply put in 110. Remember, there are 2 steps to opening an account. List the account title and list the account number. I can grade my final step and save and continue. You can now go on to the 4-1 on your own.